So could we have apologies, please?
We have apologies from Councillor Davis, Chair.
Thank you. Just before we go on to item 2, just to draw your attention to tonight's agenda. Item 7 is not coming as a report this evening, and the supplementary agenda relates to item 6, so we will take that in the order it is on the main agenda. Any declarations of interest? None. So let's move on to item 3, which is the proposed designation of a neighbourhood forum. Councillor Scott.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the recommendation is to approve the designation of the Norwich over the Wenson Neighbourhood Forum for the Northern City Centre neighbourhood area, which was previously designated in 2018. And also to ask the Neighbourhood Forum to have particular regard to addressing the issues raised surrounding some areas of underrepresentation in paragraph, and that's paragraph 27, not 25, so there's a typographical error there. Paragraph 27 of this report. So members may be aware that the City Council has recently received an application from a community group called Norwich over the Wenson, or NOW, to be designated as a neighbourhood forum. The Town and Country Planning Act 1990, as amended by the Localism Act 2011, sets out the requirements and considerations for local planning authorities in relation to applications for designation of a neighbourhood forum and designation of a neighbourhood area. Once an area and forum have been designated, a neighbourhood plan can be prepared. Neighbourhood plans must be aligned with the strategic needs and priorities of the wider local area, and once made, become part of the development plan. To help deliver the vision for their neighbourhood, where an adopted or made local plan is in place, the neighbourhood forum will benefit from 25% of the revenues from the community infrastructure levy arising from development that takes place in the area. The community group now, which I mentioned a moment ago, have been liaising with the planning policy team for the past year and recently submitted an application to have their group designated as a neighbourhood forum for the neighbourhood area previously designated in 2018. In terms of the requirements on us legally, the local planning authority has a statutory duty under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to advise and assist prospective neighbourhood forums in the preparation of a neighbourhood plan. There are 7 basic conditions that an application must meet. So first of all, that it's established for the express purpose of promoting or improving the social, economic and environmental well-being of an area, including or consisting of the neighbourhood area. Secondly, that its membership is open to individuals who live in the area, work there, and local elected members of the area. Thirdly, that membership includes a minimum of 21 individuals meeting the above criteria. And then finally, it has a written constitution. In determining whether to designate the forum as an appropriate body to undertake neighbourhood planning, the local planning authority, i.e. us, must have regard to the desirability of designating a body which must have taken reasonable steps to ensure that its membership includes at least one individual within each of the membership groups listed, has a membership which is drawn from different places in the neighbourhood and from different sections of the community, and that its purpose reflects in general terms the character of the area. So this application is considered valid by officers in terms of the documents provided, which includes a plan of the area, a written constitution, a list of 53 names of members of the forum, and information to support the makeup of the forum. Some of the information provided, however, has not been published due to GDPR reasons. In addition, an application for a neighbourhood forum must be taken through a process of public consultation, and the consultation for this period ran from the 11th of February to the 25th of March. And those documents have been made available on the City Council's website, and there are hard copies in the Millennium Library as normal practice. In total, 13 consultations were received within the consultation period, and there's a summary of all the representations received in Appendix 1. Basically, There were 4 representations in support of the proposal, 8 representations making comment, and 1 representation in objection. And that level of response is of course relatively low, considering that a significant number of individuals, organisations and groups were consulted. Just looking at the objections, they concerned the boundaries, a suggestion that businesses were excluded from membership, a suggestion that the area is already part of the city centre conservation area, and and the planning processes are working. And the Constitution also suggested doesn't have enough detail on how the forum would operate. So just in relation to those points, first of all, the boundary of the neighbourhood area was set when it was formally designated by Cabinet in 2018. Also, businesses are not excluded from membership. That was an incorrect assertion. And in considering an application for designating a neighbourhood forum, the Council is not required to consider the content of the Constitution other than in relation to the criteria I referred to earlier. Officers consider that overall the forum and the proposal meets the criteria for approval. However, in terms of the membership of the forum, it's largely made up of residents in the local area. There are a handful of those who work in the area or own or run businesses in the area or represent local organisations. In the application covering letter, the forum outlined that they had leafleted residences and took posters and leaflets to as many in the area as they could. In addition, as part of the formal consultation process, the City Council contacted many local organisations and publicised the application on social media channels and on its website. Therefore, whilst there could be greater representation for businesses and organisations in membership, there is some representation and efforts have been made through the consultation to reach these groups. In terms of financial and resource implications, there are no direct financial resource implications from this designation. However, members should be aware that should a neighbourhood plan subsequently be prepared and adopted, then the local community will benefit from 25% of the revenues from the community infrastructure levy arising from any developments that take place in their area. That's subsequent to the adoption of a neighbourhood plan, so it's not retrospective. In terms of other options considered, no alternative options were considered because it's recommended that the proposed neighbourhood forum is designated because it meets the requirements of the legislation. So, just finally, in terms of that representation, in terms of the recommendation, it's acknowledged that whilst there could be strong representation for certain parts of the local community in the membership, for example, businesses, renters, younger age groups, on balance, the forum meets the relevant criteria set out in the legislation, and therefore it's recommended that Cabinet approves the designation of Norwich over the Wenson Neighbourhood Forum for the Northern City Centre neighbourhood area previously designated in 2018. However, in acknowledging those areas where there could be stronger representation in the membership of the forum, it is also recommended that Cabinet ask the Neighbourhood Forum to have particular regard to addressing the issues raised in paragraph 27 of this report as part of their future activities. So the recommendation is there as it is, and I hope it's clear that in terms of considering and determining this application, the Council is quite constrained, and if the proposal meets the criteria, then we are obliged to approve it.
Thanks very much, Mike. Very, very clear exposition of the key issues and criteria. Judith, was there anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't need to add anything, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Cabinet colleagues? Any points? Lucy, did you want to? Oh, Gail first. Yeah.
Sorry, only to say I fully support the recommendation to asking the neighbourhood forum to have particular regard in trying to get people involved where there seems to be some gaps in representation. Thank you.
That's a view I would endorse. Lucy, did you want to any points? Ask a question?
Thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank you very much for the report. It's very interesting. Neighbourhood plans really powerful things with current Tory policies on planning and plans for planning. At the time they come where the only thing that's left is a neighbourhood plan to protect people. So I'm glad that we're supporting this. As you said, it follows on from a previous application in 2018. Refused is not representative of the area, and this time it looks like the approach has been different. Building up a mailing list, getting in touch with a lot more people. I think it says 50 members. And it's clear the group are keen to engage more people and have worked, it looks to me like they've worked closely with the council, which is really very good. I'm so pleased to see that recommendation to approve it, because it's about what the community needs and wants, and links to community benefits rather than just profit for landowners and developers. So used well, I think a neighbourhood plan can do that. And my question is that will help the council to achieve its aims in the corporate plan? And could it potentially be an investor save proposition? What resources will the council be providing to support the plan as it goes forward?
Okay, take an officer comment on that. Great.
The short answer is under the legislative framework around neighbourhood planning, we've got a statutory duty to assist, so we will need to provide some advice and engagement with them. But as you point out, there may be other routes whereby, particularly through some of the community services, there's possibilities of working together jointly to achieve shared outcomes. We don't know, we have yet to have those discussions. We haven't set aside any distinct budget for this area of work or anything, so it'll have to be judged sort of on its merits alongside other priorities that the services are working on at the time.
Okay, thanks, Graham. Any other comments on this before we go to the recommendations? Can't see anything. Yes, I mean, this is a very carefully drawn document with a clear set of criteria about the operation of the community forum and the requirements both of the council but also of the forum to have due regard to key strategic policies of the authority. And the corporate plan, which is just out, and I know we have representatives from the forum, if it's so constituted. One very good document is to have a look at the council's new corporate plan, which I think you'll find informative. Okay, let's go to the recommendations, and they're laid out on page 5, 2 recommendations. All those in favour, please indicate. Okay, thank you very much. Right, let's go on to the next item, and this is a good piece of news, the Affordable Warmth Grant. That's on page 35, and that's Councillor Beth Jones, the floor.
Thank you. This report has two halves to it. Firstly, the granting of some money towards specialist supported housing, and secondly, for an affordable warmth grant. It comes from the Better Care Fund money, which we have to provide disabled facilities grants, and we've had an underspend for 2 years, even though we've met all the demands for that service. So it's quite an exciting opportunity for us to do something to have a significant impact for a number of people. Firstly, in terms of the specialist housing, sadly there is always far too little to meet individual needs, so I'm really pleased that we'll be able to support someone in living more independently. But secondly, we come on to the 496,000 that we'll be able to spend, hopefully, on affordable warmth grants. Given the current astronomical fuel rises, I think this is incredibly timely, and when we also look at the rise in excess winter deaths that's been charted over the last couple of years, never has it been more important to help people in heating their homes. From 2019-2020 to 2020-2021, there was almost a 20% rise in excess winter deaths, and a significant number of those were down to poorly heated homes. So by replacing boilers that are more than 15 years old, we can look at improving the efficiency, both in terms of the cost to people, but also in terms of carbon emissions. So there's two benefits to this. And by dramatically improving that efficiency, we're making it easier for people to make, when they're faced with that incredibly difficult choice of do they choose to heat their home or do they choose food. It's a choice that we don't want anyone to face, but we're putting people, if we can make that choice a little bit easier for them, the significant impact we can also have, which is really nice as a district council in terms of health and well-being and the impact on an already overstretched NHS. When people don't have adequately heated homes, the chances of repeated hospital admissions are significant. So there are so many different benefits for them. And there are often, in this case, we can have private sector residents. There are other sources of funding when we're looking at other types of accommodation, but it's really nice to be able to provide something for this area, particularly focusing on our residents who are receiving council tax reduction. So I think it would bring benefits both on a social level but also on an environmental level, and not just looking at it in terms of the boilers, we're looking at double glazing as well, and looking at how we can look at other sources of funding if there's other forms of insulation that are needed. So I think it's a really practical solution using money maybe haven't expected, but being able to do something creative in a very timely manner.
Thank you very much, Beth, for that. Kevin, any comments at all?
I just add that it's a really good bit of partnership working with our county council colleagues. They've been really supportive of this really quite exciting piece of work, and I think it's really building on the work that we already do as an integrated team with social care colleagues in our team, and I'm really proud to have it. That's great.
I note the list of contact officers on page 41 show a good organisational approach. Any other officer comments at all? Phil or Rachel at this point? No? Very good piece of work. Cabinet members, any comments, observations? Gail?
Make an observation. No, I think it's encouraging that for once we're being allowed to use money which we haven't been able to utilise. We haven't got to give it back, we can actually use it for some good. So really pleased with the proposal, and isn't it nice that we've been able to support somebody to have a better quality of life and independent accommodation by giving some money to the county council so that the right accommodation can be sourced for that particular person. So we're very impressed that we've been able to do a good bit of partnership working.
Thank you, Gail. Any other cabinet colleagues at this point? Lucy?
Thank you, yes, thanks, Alan. Yeah, it's absolutely unacceptable that people die of the cold, and so I'm really pleased to see this and to see the great work of the county, and the double glazing is really good. So 65 homes in need of affordable heat will get those new boilers, but the boilers themselves are going to have to be replaced in the future. So replacing gas boilers with gas boilers now isn't really very practical, actually, or timely. 14% of UK emissions come from domestic energy use, and banning gas boilers is a major move to help the country hit its zero by 2050 target. So also given the global gas shortage, which is causing firms to go bust and massive hikes in prices, and not to mention the supply issues from Russia, a move away from gas can't come soon enough. So in 2 years, the government's banning them from newly built houses. In 2035, all installations of gas boilers will be banned, and gas prices are only going to go up. So obviously, this is a certain amount of houses, and choices were limited. I understand that, but given all the other things I've just said, what's the long-term strategy for these and other households in this position.
What I would say is the good thing is that in the immediate future, people will be warned. Beth?
I am incredibly proud of this proposal and I won't apologise for it. We've got to help the most number of people we can right now. This is a very, very real issue, and I am sure there are people in this chamber, and there are most certainly many thousands of our residents who are terrified by the rising cost of fuel right now. We need solutions that are immediate and that help the most number of people. I'm not going to apologise for something that is going to keep people alive. I think, yes, I am all in favour of anything that we can do that is sustainable and any opportunity in the longer term around that, but I also want to weigh that up with getting real benefits for our residents right now. And actually this is a solution that does have a reduction in carbon emissions, but it also helps people stay healthy and stay alive. And I think we have to balance all those things. I think we can't see them in a silo. I think it's a fantastic proposal. Thank you.
Yeah. And as we know from the data that we've been recording since 2007, we have a very significant achievement in carbon reduction and very ambitious carbon reduction plans, and we will use the newest technologies as they become available. Right, any other comments from any Cabinet colleagues, officers? No? Let's go to the recommendations then on this good piece of news. They're listed on page 35. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That is agreed. Right. Talking about carbon this evening, decarbonisation. So Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund contract. Go, over to you. Page 49.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to recommend the award of a contract to deliver insulation measures to 45 council-owned homes in Norwich, funded from the government's Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund grant scheme and the thermal comfort budget in the housing revenue account. I have to congratulate officers for a successful bid made back in the autumn of 2021 to the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. In February of this year, Norwich City Council was awarded £0.855 million of funding through the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. This, combined with a £0.350 million existing budget within the approved 22-23 HRA capital programme, gives a fund of £1.205 million. This will allow 45 council homes that are wimpy, no-fines, concrete-based construction to benefit from solid wall insulation, which will enable their energy efficiency rating to be increased to an EPC rating of C, with their current rating sitting between D and G. I was interested in the terminology of wimpy no-fines. Apparently, these were houses built after the war when there was a lack of building materials. Sounds a bit familiar, really, but the 45 properties have previously been identified as some of the worst performing homes in terms of energy efficiency and will benefit greatly from the proposed installation work. With the current cost of living crisis and energy bills soaring, I'm sure that these residents will notice the difference that this installation will make whilst also reducing carbon emissions. As I've said on previous occasions, I wish that we did not have to chase money, but I am grateful of just how good our officers are at just doing that. However, one of the conditions of this successful bid and the resulting funding is that the work has to be completed by the 30th of April 2023. Otherwise, any remaining money has to be returned to the awarding body. We certainly don't want that to happen. That means that work needs to commence as soon as possible and an installer appointed to carry out a wide range of works. This is complex specialist work, and using a suitable procurement framework, namely the Fusion 21 Energy Efficiency Framework, gives us the necessary assurances to appoint a contractor. E.ON Energy Solutions Limited has been identified as the only supplier on the framework with the capacity to deliver these works in this very short timescale. The recommendation, therefore, is to directly award the contract to E.ON Energy Solutions Limited, in accordance with the rules and procedures set out in the framework agreement and in accordance with the public contract regulations of 2015. By awarding through this framework, we will secure added social value and contract management support from Fusion 21. Importantly, the funding body are content that E.ON Energy Solutions Limited has the capacity to deliver for us. The contract will be managed using existing resource within the environmental strategy team. An integral part of this scheme will be the consultation with the residents of the properties already identified. They will have a choice as to whether they want the work to be undertaken, and engagement throughout will be absolutely key. Ward councillors for the relevant wards have been informed and will be briefed before work commences. So I'm sure you'll all want to support the recommendation as set out on page 49. I do realise that this is work only to be done on, again, a small number of properties, but it shows this council's commitment to reducing fuel poverty and reducing carbon emissions. Insulation measures are one of the most effective ways of doing this. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Gail. Was there anything, Lou, did you want to add anything to this? No, it's a very comprehensive report. Any cabinet colleagues? Sorry, Rachel. Anything from you? Thank you, Gail. Any other cabinet colleagues? Okay, thank you, Lucy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really good to see that fabric first approach and the insulation for 45 properties through grants. And I've noticed been identified during previous housing stock analysis as some of the worst performing homes in terms of energy efficiency, and that the bill savings would be around £178 a year per house and 67 kilowatt hours. So that's considerable for those homes, so it's excellent news. I wondered how many more homes have been identified in the analysis as worth performing like that, and what percentage of total stock they are?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I can't remember quite off the top of my head, but I can get the data for you. I do know that there are some additional Wimpy No fines, and it may be that there's another wave of funding that we can then look at to do sort of additional ones as well. But yeah, that's information that I don't want to say and get it wrong.
Okay, well, note that as an action point. Right, no other comments or questions? No, Gail?
I also, I think, made the comment when I was having a briefing on this, I was concerned because, the residents may not want the work done, and I was concerned that we had some other houses in reserve so that we didn't give any money to the government or to the funding body. We don't want to give money back. So we have got that in train so that, if someone for some reason doesn't want it done, we can find other properties.
So that's useful to know we've got a reserve list. That's excellent. Okay, so very good piece of work. Thank you very much. Can we go to the recommendations on page 49? It's a very straightforward recommendation of awarding the contract for this work using the Fusion 21 framework. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's agreed. So if we go to the supplementary agenda now, that's the award of a contract for the construction of a Towns Fund project, or a successful Towns Fund project, at the former Carrow House site, and that's in the main of Council Mansfield.
Thank you, Chair. This is around the maintenance of Carrow House, and the context is that, as you will all be aware, the council was awarded £25 million by the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities for 8 projects, one of which is the East Norwich Master Plan and Carrow House. And we considered as Cabinet the separation of the refurbishment of the works for Carrow House at our meeting in October. And the reason for that, separating Old Carrow House and New Carrow House refurbishment projects, was due to the potential contractor notifying the council of their intention to decline entering the contract offered to them, because it had become apparent that rapidly escalating subcontracting costs, the works needed to the historic parts of the building, which we call Old Carrow House, meant they were no longer willing to deliver the works tendered for. So following further discussions, Cabinet agreed that it would separately tender for the refurbishment works of Old Carrow House. Just as an aside, the works on New Carrow House are proceeding well, and they're expected to be completed by the end of this month. Meanwhile, discussions have been continuing about the works needed on Old Carrow House. A project and design team has been appointed, and the tender of the works is expected to be issued mid this month. The contract value is likely to be over the key decision threshold of the Council, and delegated powers are necessary to allow the project to proceed at pace, as decisions will be needed prior to the June Cabinet if the project is not to be further delayed. Now, the time frame of the award is critical, as the external works for the listed building need to be completed between May and September, as they are weather and temperature dependent. And I think there's, for example, on the old building, there's lime water being used, and that's got to be used, deployed during the summer months when it's warmer. The refurbishment works include a comprehensive external refurbishment to ensure the property remains wind and watertight and to prevent deterioration of the external fabric. There's a range of other work, masonry repairs to all elevations, repointing and replacement brickwork where this has been damaged, and stonework to the balcony on the east elevation will be overhauled. External joinery will be repaired where there's suffering from timber decay. All rainwater goods will be checked, repaired or replaced where damaged, and will be redecorated. The conservatory, which is one of the highlights of the building, will be overhauled, and that will include patch timber repairs where suffering from decay, a full redecoration carried out internally and externally, and isolated broken glazing will be replaced. And then internally the ground and first floors will be refurbished. So it's an awful lot of work on this listed building. Some of the proposed internal and external repairs and decoration work will require a specialist conservation contractor and cannot be undertaken during cold weather periods, as I mentioned earlier on. So these items will be fast-tracked so they can be completed early. The internal town deal procurement officer, under the guidance of the town deal programme manager, will lead the procurement for the contractor, and to ensure the works for the listed building can be completed and the project costs do not exceed the current budget, the construction contract will be intended to include core and optional works. Core costs will be those related to the listed building, and the optional works will be those related to the refurbishment of the internal office areas. So the financial arrangements are set out from paragraph 24. Overall, the funding for Carrow House, that's both old and new, is 4.873 million. You can see that all set out in table 1. Funding comes from the town's fund grant of 4.192 million, with the additional match funding of 0.681 million, of which 565,000 relates to the Business Rates Schools Fund and 116,000 from the 2021 and 21-22 Economic Development Fund. So Old Carrow House funding available is at 753,000 on the proposed construction contract, and the associated costs such as consultancy, with a possibility of an additional 48,000 from New Carrow House contingency if no further additional costs are incurred there. So potentially up to 801,000 could be accessible for Old Carrow House if the contingency was not used for New Carrow House. The estimated project costs for Old Carrow House works are £717,000. You see that in table 2, paragraph 32. So this is really, really important. This is a listed building which has recently had its listing upgraded following a request from us to have those buildings in East Norwich re-evaluated, and we have taken responsibility of this important historic building for the city, and we take that very seriously, and we want to ensure that we maintain it and care for it appropriately as befits its status as a listed building, but also its status as an important part of the history of the city. So the conclusion is in accordance with our constitution. You may know that contracts that are greater than 500,000 value must be determined by Cabinet or delegated by Cabinet to officers. The value of the contract is expected, in this case, to be, as I say, approximately £720,000, and it exceeds the criteria for a key decision, and therefore the contract will requires a Cabinet decision. However, it is likely that the works will need to commence before the next Cabinet in June 22, as I explained, and therefore it is recommended that the decision to award the contract is delegated to the Executive Director of Development and City Services in consultation with the portfolio holder for sustainable growth. And I think it doesn't say here, but I think also finance. I think it's myself and Paul. We can maybe get some clarification of that from officers. But anyway, I commend this. It's really, really important.
Yeah. Thanks very much for the clear reports. Graham, do you want to add anything?
Just to clarify that last point, yes, the recommendation does refer to being in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Resources, in addition to yourself, because of the values involved. And the only other thing I was going to add to Mike's very full explanation was just a brief apology. It's come as a late paper for you, effectively. We've been dealing with some personal issues in the team, effectively, that are working with Townsdale programmes, so there was a bit of a delay in preparing papers.
Thanks, Graham. This very good news moving this forward. Any Cabinet comments at all? Lucy, do you have a question?
Thank you, yes I do. Yeah, it's good to see that heritage sort of saved and improved and put into use. Thank you for the report. Thank you, Mike. Just to ask, well, I'm sure the council will keep track of the work and keep it on time to budget and ensure all that, but to ask about the ongoing maintenance and repair costs to Old Carrow House, and if the council's got money set aside on an annual basis for repairs and maintenance, because as you said, the specialist skills needed to restore it will be needed to look after it. And are we confident that we're going to get sufficient rent to pay for looking after that probably slightly complicated building?
There are risks around this area because of the nature of what we're doing with the Townsdale, but the business case that was part of the Townsdale funding allowed, it's predicated on basically refurbing the offices so we can let it effectively on relatively short-term office developments, and that market is holding up pretty well in the city because there is a lack of decent supply, and that was part of the reason why we chose to let it for that decent, that meanwhile type of uses, because we're expecting to be able to attract new office occupiers to the city at the moment, and that fits in with the wider economic strategy that we've got. But clearly, until we've got something that's in a state that we can re-let, there's an element of risk around the market. But the evidence that we took when we embarked on this led us to believe that the rents coming in would be sufficient to pay for the ongoing maintenance and management of the costs of the building. But as always with this, particularly historic buildings like this, you never quite know what those costs are going to be. So this is based on assumptions, but needless to say, it comes into the wider budget position of the council as well, where we've got various reserves in place if something dramatic should happen to any of the properties that we own.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you for that additional information. Coming to the recommendations, page 3 of the supplementary agenda. Recommendation 1 about entering into contract for refurbishment, and then delegations with the Executive Director and the portfolio holders, Mike and Paul. Okay, all those in favour of those recommendations, please indicate. Thank you very much. That is agreed. So we can now go back to the main agenda again. And now we're going on to item 8, which is the award of a contract for contact manager, workflow and document management systems. That's Paul.
Thank you very much, Chair. The Customer Relationship Management System is a piece of software used across the Council to manage interactions with customers and store information about them. The system will contain a document management system that will hold copies of correspondence and documents from customers, and where appropriate, third parties can be integrated, as well with other systems within the council, such as housing and revenues. The previous system was introduced in 2004, but an upgrade will be less disruptive than an entirely new system. The upgrade will provide a much better resource to deal with customers. Better access can be made with other records, for example, if they have debts across the council, for example, rent or council tax. Equally, if someone dies, then it may be possible to flag that up, and so that if where appropriate, the remaining spouse may be entitled to a council tax single person's discount. Sharing data with different departments within the council and where appropriate legitimate third parties will be important and unquestionably improve efficiency. The council's data will be stored in the cloud, and therefore less vulnerable to cyber attacks or even a Russian missile landing on City Hall. I do believe that what is suggested within this report will, in the long term, produce savings for this council. As the cabinet level for resources, just as money is the blood supply that maintains our vital services, it is our IT resources which are the nerves which link the systems and allow this council to carry on its vital functions. By agreeing this report, it will improve both our management of data and also our relationship with our customers, who are, of course, the most important thing to this organisation, and I do believe in the long term make some savings. Now, if members do have technical questions, I'm going to say that we have Julie and Paul here to save my embarrassment, because I'm sure I wouldn't be able to answer them. But I do very much thank them for the excellent work that they have done in producing this report, and very much commend this to this cabinet.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for some vivid images in presenting what
you know that we've done.
So yes, I mean this and the next report are two examples of the underpinning the transformation work we're doing as a council. Julia, would you like to make any comments in exposure to it?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that over the last year we've put a lot of work into coming to this conclusion. We've had some consultancy help from people too as well. We've met with other authorities who do it really well as other suppliers, and we've come to the conclusion that this is the best option for Norwich, and it's a really key component of our customer experience and digital strategy in order to deliver the improvements that we need to do for the workforce, our residents and our people of Norwich. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anything from you, Paul?
The aim that we're approaching with this whole upgraded system and the introduction of master data management is that we'll have the best positive impact at all stages for the customers and staff. So it will be phased, it will be with minimum disruption, but we're looking to accelerate it and achieve as much as we can inside the calendar year as we can.
Thank you. Very helpful points. Any cabinet colleagues, any questions? Yes. Lucy, do you have any comment you want to make on this report?
Yes, thank you. It's good to see an improvement forecast. I'm just wondering the expected benefits from the former system. It's disappointing that they didn't materialise, as it said, like budget holders were expected to forecast financial position varies without real-time information, payroll wasn't integrated, reporting into the system, and it's costing £697,000 to put right with a better system. I just wondered, how long did we have the former system, and why were those issues not spotted when that was put into place?
So, Annabelle.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think you've just asked the question to the next paper. So, Lucy, I don't know if you had a question, but I'm ready for your question now on the next paper.
I have got a question for that one as well, actually. Sorry, yeah, this is the data analytics one, isn't it? Sorry. So data modelling and the evidence-based policy making that this provides, doesn't just require the adequate software, but officers skilled in monitoring and evaluation and operational research. And can you explain whether there are currently data analyst roles within the council that can sort of assess the data that you get from this, and whether there are any plans to increase that area?
Yeah, we do have some skills across the organisation, but there are plans to increase the skills in that area. And we have got a service review of the IT service, and we have incorporated all of that into that. Yeah.
Good, okay, thank you. Let's go to recommendation then, which is on page 55. All those in favour of the recommendation, please indicate. Thank you, that is passed. So let's go on to the next item 9. That's procurement, HR and finance system. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. The main contract period for the existing HR and finance systems expires in June of 2022. A further 2-year period is, however, available to enable re-procurement and implementation of these systems. Although this sounds like a long time, there are several factors set out in the report which means prompt action is necessary to maximise the time to implement these systems in a way that supports new ways of working within the council and efficiencies for users using these systems. Using the G-Cloud procurement framework, officers have reviewed the options available and concluded that a single enterprise resource planning system is the best way forward to meet the council's needs. Suitable systems have been identified for further investigation, and these should be provided in the cloud rather than being held on physical servers of the council. This improves the resilience and security of those systems and ensures that the most up-to-date version is always used. The same approach has been proposed for the Silica upgrade, also on today's agenda, and is consistent with the council's IT policy. A period of market testing has been undertaken, with demonstrations of the alternative system being considered by officers on finance, HR, IT and procurement. Officers are now asking for the final decision to award a new contract to be delegated to them, subject to final clarification on price and suitability. Having the right tools is an essential ingredient in the management and supporting of our most vital assets, our staff. And understanding the planning of our finances is also vitally important in the managing of this council's efficiency in the current climate of constraint and uncertainty. Therefore, I would urge members of this cabinet to approve this report.
Thanks very much, Paul. Any officer comment at this stage? Yes, Annabelle.
Thank you, Leader. Fundamentally, I fully echo what Paul is saying. It's essential that we give people the opportunity to have access to the information in a timely manner and with the tools that they need. This system manages one of the largest resource sets, and when we had a chat around the key systems we have, this is one of our 5 key systems across the authority. And obviously you understand the challenges we have financially, so being able to manage that is critical. But if you don't mind, Councillor Galvin, I'll try and answer some of your questions you had, but I'm pretty sure if that's okay. Yeah. So I can't talk back on the original project, but what I can reflect on and why we wanted to make sure we did an appropriate review, ensure we had the right resources to put this project in, is actually the cost of the old system is very low, and therefore sometimes you don't get all the benefits that you may get through other solutions. The soft market testing has identified for us that we can get far more out of a solution, as we say, from an ERP perspective, than fundamentally working on the existing systems. It's been really key to us to deliver the major project we've just done with the Project Place and going live with our joint ventures. That has taken the resources of both IT and my support services, because we support the company in setting up these solutions to bring across those staff, and we've done it. It was difficult, but it's also made me realise through overseeing that fundamentally I can get far more from a new solution. It's really timely from a contract perspective, because we will need to be going up to the market anyway. It's not now worthwhile backfilling some of those other things that we would like to have seen on the old system that we know that we can put in for the future. So that's why we're looking forward and not going to invest much more in the current solution.
Okay, so that deals with Lucy's question. Are there any comments or questions from Cabinet members? No. Does anybody want to go below the line on this item before we go to the recommendations? No? Okay, so this is the second of two really very important investments in our IT infrastructure. And it's good to see the benefits that's going to flow from this investment significantly in terms of customer interactions, helping the organisation's capacity and giving us the data that we need. So let's go to the recommendations, which are on page 67. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried, and that